are achievements in motorsport that belong to a championship table. There are achievements that belong to a record book. And then there are achievements that belong somewhere stranger, somewhere between fact, myth, argument, and obsession. The Triple Crown of Motorsport is one such thing. It sounds simple enough. Win the Monaco Grand Prix, win the Indy 500, win the 24 Hour of Le Mans. 3 races, 3 trophies, in 3 completely different worlds. But the more you look at it, the more absurd the challenge becomes. Monaco is precision. It is a Grand Prix squeezed between stone walls, balconies, harbour water, and history. You do not win Monaco by merely being quick. You win Monaco by being exact. You win it by threading a Formula One car through a circuit that does not forgive a lazy thought, let alone a lazy steering input. Indianapolis is speed of a completely different kind. It is not about brushing the Armco at St. Devote or judging the camber at Casino Square. It is about 4 corners, 500 miles, traffic, turbulence, bravery, patience, and the strange mental rhythm of oval racing. European champions have gone there with reputations intact and left humbled. Le Mans is another thing again. It is not a race so much as a siege. 24 hours, changing light, changing grip, changing weather, traffic, mechanical sympathy, teamwork, patience, and then after all of that, somehow, still speed. That is why the Triple Crown is so difficult. It does not simply ask a driver to be great, it asks a driver to be great in 3 different languages. There is also another version of the Triple Crown. Instead of Monaco, some people use the Formula One World Championship as the Grand Prix racing element. That gives us the alternate version, the Formula One World Championship, the Indy 500 and Le Mans. For this episode we're going to take a look at those men, aside from Graham Hill, who have come closest to achieving this most amazing of feats. To be truly close, a driver must not just have one piece of the puzzle. He must have won at least one of the major events, and he must have had a genuine opportunity to win the others. Not a guest appearance, not a sentimental entry, not a, well, technically he started the race footnote, a real opportunity. This is not a list of men who completed the Triple Crown, only Graham Hill did that. He stands alone, and we will come to him at the end. This is a list of the greatest nearlymen, the drivers who came close enough to win the ultimate prize. And the top 5 include Jim Clark, Denny Hulme, Fernando Alonso, Mario Andretti, and Jacques Villeneuve. At number 5 is Jim Clark, perhaps the most naturally gifted driver on this list. That is not to say he has the strongest Triple Crown, however. He does not. That is why he is number 5. But in terms of raw driving purity, adaptability, and elegance, Clark might be the driver here who feels least like he was ever defeated by a type of circuit or category of racing. He was not a driver who seemed to have limits in the normal sense. Clark won the Formula One World Championship in both 1963 and 1965. Those championships were not accidents of consistency or clever points gathering. They were statements of superiority. In the right Lotus, on the right day, Clark did not simply beat fields, he disappeared from them. However, due to a number of circumstances, Clark never won Monaco. That sounds almost wrong. Jim Clark and Monaco feel as though they should fit together. The precision, the delicacy, the car control, everything about Clark seems suited to the place. Yet the win never came. Reliability, circumstance, and the odd cruelty of racing history kept Monaco off his record. What he did have, though, was Indianapolis. In 1965, Clark won the Indy 500 in a Lotus Ford, and this was not merely another victory. It was one of the landmark moments in Indianapolis history. The rear-engine revolution had arrived. The old front-engine roasters were being pushed into the past, and Clark was the man who gave that future its defining victory. He did not win Indy as a novelty act. He did not win because others fell away and he happened to be there. He won because he and Lotus were devastatingly effective. The man who had mastered Formula One turned up at the Brickyard and helped change the place. That alone gives Clark a very serious Triple Crown profile. But even that undersells Clark's Indy record, because there are strong cases that Clark could, and perhaps should, have been credited with more than one Indy 500 victory. In 1963, he finished second to Parnelli Jones in a race still argued over because Jones's car was leaking oil late in the event. Clark considered black flagging Jones with officials, which would almost certainly have handed the race to Clark, but they allowed Jones to continue. Lotus and Ford chose not to protest, and the result stood. But the controversy has never completely gone away. Clark was not just close, he was close in a race where many believed the winner should have been called in. And he did all this, debuting in his first Indy 500. Then there was 1966, the year Graham Hill officially won the Indy 500. Clark finished second, but that result also carried a scoring controversy. Clark's Lotus team believed he had not lost the lap that officials counted against him after his spins, and there were people in the paddock who felt Clark may have actually completed the distance first. The official result remained. Hill won the race, and there was no successful protest, but the debate is part of Indy folklore. Even Hill himself was reportedly surprised to be declared the winner. So Clark's Indianapolis case is stronger than a simple one-win line suggests. Officially, he won in 1965. Historically, he had credible arguments around 63 and 66 as well. That means Clark did not merely adapt to Indianapolis. He was a winning level force there almost every time he had the right car beneath him. Now this already gives Clark two massive pillars in the alternative Triple Crown, the Formula One World Championship and the Indy 500. The missing piece was Le Mans. And Clark was not just a casual Le Mans entrant. In 1960, he finished third overall at Le Mans in an Aston Martin DBR1, sharing with Roy Salvadori. Third overall at Le Mans is not trivia. It is not the result of someone dipping their toe into endurance racing. It is a podium in the world's greatest sports car race. Clark proved he could be a factor at Le Mans. He proved he could run at the front in a completely different discipline, but this is where the ranking becomes brutal. Clark's Le Mans podium is impressive, but is not quite the same as the near wins above him. He came close in the broad historical sense, but not in the one twist of fate and he wins the race sense. His missing Le Mans victory does not carry the same controversy as Hulme in 1966, or the same repeated Le Mans pursuit as Andretti, or the same factory near miss as Villeneuve in 2008. And yet, if you were building a driver in a laboratory to chase a Triple Crown, you would definitely not leave out Jim Clark. And that is the paradox. On paper, he ranks fifth. In imagination, he'd probably rank first. Because if Clark had lived longer, if he had been given more Le Mans opportunities in the right machinery, this would be a different story. He was not a specialist who stretched himself into other disciplines. He was a universal driver who happened to run out of time. And that's why Jim Clark belongs here. Not because he completed enough boxes to dominate the list, but because the boxes he did complete were so significant, and because the ones he missed feel like less the evidence of limitation than evidence of a career cut short. Clark is the elegant nearly man, the driver who makes you wonder not whether he could have done it, but how much he would have done if history had allowed him. In number 4 is Denny Hulme. Hulme should be talked about far more often in Triple Crown discussions. He is sometimes remembered in broad strokes: the tough New Zealander, the bear, the understated world champion, the man who did his talking with the steering wheel. But when you actually lay out his record against a Triple Crown, it is astonishingly strong. Denny satisfies the Formula One element in the strongest possible way. He was the 1967 Formula One World Champion, and in the same year, he won the Monaco Grand Prix. Now this matters. Hulme is a driver who satisfies both aspects of the Triple Crown for Grand Prix, and that is no mean feat. He won the championship, and he won the most prestigious Grand Prix of them all. So the Formula One side is complete. Then comes Le Mans, and this is where Hulme's case becomes one of the most fascinating on the list. In 1966, Denny shared a GT40 Mark II with Ken Miles. The official winner of the race was Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon in the sister Ford. Miles and Hulme were classified second, but the story is one of the most controversial finishes in Le Mans history. Ford wanted the image. After years trying to beat Ferrari, after all the money, effort, and corporate pride poured into the GT40 program, they wanted a formation finish. They wanted 3 Fords crossing the line together, and they wanted that photograph. But Le Mans is not a photograph. It is a distance race. Because the McLaren Amon car had started further back on the grid than the Miles Hulme car, officials ruled that it had covered a greater distance over the 24 hours. Despite Miles and Hulme dominating the race, it gave McLaren and Amon the victory and left Miles and Hulme in second. So officially, Denny did not win Le Mans. In every meaningful sense of opportunity, he absolutely could have and should have. This was not a driver circulating in a class entry or hoping for attrition. Hulme was in a race-winning Ford at the height of one of the most famous factory assaults in endurance racing history. The car was good enough, the pairing was certainly good enough, the result was shaped by team management, interpretation, and the strange arithmetic of a staged finish. That gives Hulme one of the strongest Le Mans near misses in the history of this conversation. And then there's Indianapolis. Hulme started the Indy 500 multiple times and finished 4th in both 1967 and 1968. Again, that matters. 4th at Indy is a serious result. Twice finishing 4th is not a fluke. It shows that Denny was not simply a Formula One champion sampling American racing for the novelty. He was super competitive. He did not win the 500, but he had genuine opportunities. He was close enough to belong in this discussion. So Hulme's case is incredibly broad. F1 world champion, tick. Monaco winner, tick. Le Mans near winner, tick. Indy 500 contender, tick. That is a remarkable spread, and it is why he sits above Jim Clark on this list. Clark had the greater mythology and, in truth, an even stronger Indy record than the official statistics suggest. But Hulme satisfies the F1 element more completely because he had both the title and Monaco, and his Le Mans near miss was sharper than Clark's 1960 podium. The reason Denny is not higher is that he never won either of the 2 non-F1 Triple Crown legs. He had the opportunity at Le Mans and the competitiveness at Indy, but the final trophies did not arrive. The top 3 all have either 2 major pieces completed or a missing leg that was pursued in a way that became central to their legacy. Hulme's case is quieter, but quiet should not be confused with weak. In fact, Denny may be one of the most complete, forgotten Triple Crown candidates of all. He had the toughness for Indy, the patience for Le Mans, the precision for Monaco, and the consistency for a world championship. He was not theatrical, he was not romanticised in quite the same way as Clark, he was not a modern marketing story like Alonso, and he did not carry the famous Andretti name across generations. He was simply very, very good in almost everything he drove. And perhaps that is why his Triple Crown case has been underplayed. Denny Hulme did not sell the dream, but he nearly lived it. In number 3 is Fernando Alonso. Alonso is the modern face of the Triple Crown chase. For a generation of fans, he is the driver who made the concept feel alive again. Before Alonso, the Triple Crown was mostly discussed as an historical achievement, something belonging to Graham Hill, Mario Andretti, and the other great cross-discipline names of earlier eras. Alonso turned it back into a live pursuit, and his case is extremely strong. Start with the Formula One element. Alonso won the Formula One World Championship in 2005 and 2006. He also won Monaco twice in 06 and 07. That means the Grand Prix component is fully satisfied. He has both the championship and Monaco. That is important because some Triple Crown debaters become messy when one driver has the title but not Monaco and vice versa. Alonso removes that ambiguity. He has both. Then he went to Le Mans and won. Not once, but twice. His victories in 2018 and 2019 came with Toyota during a period when Toyota had the strongest top-class program. Some critics will always point to the competitive context of those wins, especially after the withdrawal of Porsche from LMP1. But that does not erase the achievement. Le Mans still has to be won. The race has to be completed. The traffic still has to be managed. And the night still has to be survived. Alonso did what he went there to do. Now that leaves Indianapolis. And Indianapolis is why Alonso is not number one. In 2017, Alonso arrived at the Indy 500 with McLaren, Honda, and Andretti Motorsport. It was a sensational story. A two-time Formula One world champion skipping Monaco to chase the Triple Crown at Indy sounded like something from another age. In modern motorsport, where drivers are often locked into narrow contracts and tightly controlled calendars, Alonso's decision felt almost rebellious. But then he backed it up. He qualified fifth, he led for 27 laps, he looked comfortable in traffic, and he adapted quickly to the rhythm of the speedway. And for a long stretch of the race, it was entirely reasonable to imagine Alonso winning the Indy 500 on debut. But then the Honda engine failed. And that failure is the emotional core of Alonso's Triple Crown story. It did not happen on lap 5 when the dream was still theoretical. It happened after he had shown pace, after he had led, and after he had become one of the central characters of the race. That was a genuine opportunity. Not a symbolic attempt, not a publicity stunt, a proper shot. His later Indy attempts complicate the story. In 2019, McLaren's effort collapsed so badly that Alonso failed to qualify. That was a different kind of drama, and not the flattering either. In 2020, he made the race, but was not a true winning threat. Those later attempts slightly weaken the aura of the 2017 run, but they do not erase it. The 2017 Indy 500 remains one of the great modern what-if moments. So why is Alonso third rather than first? Because his missing leg is still missing in a way that feels closer than Villeneuve or Andretti at Le Mans. Alonso led laps and was in contention, but he did not finish second. He did not reach the final lap fight. He did not stand on the podium watching the trophy go elsewhere. His chance was real, but the race still had enough distance remaining that we cannot say he was robbed of a near certain win. Villeneuve and Andretti, by contrast, both have the Indy and the F1 title, and both finished second at Le Mans. That is a brutally clean kind of proximity. Alonso's case is broader in one sense. He had the F1 title and Monaco and Le Mans. That is extraordinary. He's the only driver in the top 5 apart from Graham Hill at the end who has fully satisfied the F1 element and also won Le Mans. But because Indianapolis remains unfinished, and because the Indy 500 is such a specialised, unpredictable event, he sits third. But still, Alonso's place in this list is beyond question. He did not just talk about the Triple Crown, he actively chased it. He left the comfort zone of Formula One, he went to Le Mans and won. He went to Indy and immediately became a contender. He turned a historical curiosity into a modern storyline. And there is something fitting about Alonso being here. His whole career has a restless quality. The talent was always obvious. The choices were often complicated. The timing was often cruel. He is a driver whose greatness sometimes seems to have been spent fighting machinery, politics, and fate, as much as rivals and circuits. The Triple Crown suited him perfectly, because it was never just about winning 3 races. It was about proving that the driver was bigger than the category. And in 2017, even without winning, Alonso reminded the world that he was. In number 2 is Mario Andretti. Andretti might be the most complete racing driver on this list. And this is a bold statement, considering the list includes Clark, Alonso, Hulme, and Jacques Villeneuve. But Andretti's career is almost absurd in its range. Formula One, Indy cars, dirt ovals, stock cars, sports cars, championships, one-off victories, American racing, European racing, short tracks, super speedways, road courses, endurance racing. Andretti did not just cross disciplines, he lived them. His Triple Crown case begins with Indy. He won the Indy 500 in 1969. That victory alone would define many careers. For Andretti, it became both a jewel and a curse, because Indianapolis would spend the rest of his life giving him heartbreaks, near misses, and a family mythology. But the win was real, and it was huge. Then came Formula One. Andretti won the 1978 Formula One World Championship with Lotus. At his peak in ground effect machinery, he was superb. The season is remembered with sadness because of the death of Ronnie Peterson, but Andretti's championship remains one of the great achievements by an American driver in European Grand Prix racing. Andretti won the World Championship, but he did not win Monaco. So he satisfies the F1 title part, but not the complete title and Monaco standard. It does not destroy his case, because the alternative Triple Crown used the F1 title rather than Monaco, and Andretti was absolutely a world champion. But if we're asking whether he fully ticked the F1 box in the strongest possible way, he falls just short because Monaco is missing. Still, Andretti is number 2 because of Le Mans. And this is where his case deserves more detail than it often gets. Because Andretti was not simply a driver who turned up at Le Mans once, finished second, and became a nearly man by accident. His Le Mans pursuit stretched across decades, and several of those attempts came in machinery that was genuinely capable of winning the race. His first major opportunity came in 1966 with Ford. That alone tells you the level of the chance. This was not a privateer curiosity. It was the Ford GT40 program at the height of its war against Ferrari. Andretti shared a Hulme and Moody Ford Mark II with Lucien Bianchi. The car had the speed and the factory backing to be part of Ford's winning assault, but the race ended early with mechanical failure. That is important. Andretti did not fail because he was out of his depth. He was in the right car, with the right kind of program, in one of the most famous Le Mans campaigns ever mounted. The result did not come, but the opportunity was real. Then came 1967. Again, Andretti was in serious machinery. This time it was the Ford Mark IV, the American-built successor to the GT40 Mark II, and the car that would win the race in the hands of Dan Gurney and AJ Foyt. Andretti again shared with Lucien Bianchi, and was once more he was part of Ford's frontline attack. But Le Mans can turn a great opportunity into a nightmare very quickly. During the night, a brake problem sent Andretti into a heavy accident at the Dunlop Bridge. The crash ended his race and left him injured. It was a frightening reminder that Le Mans in the 60s were not just a test of speed or endurance, but it was brutally dangerous. But again, the key point for this ranking is opportunity. Andretti had one. In fact, he had 2 in consecutive years, both with Ford, both in machinery that belonged in the overall victory conversation. After that, Le Mans drifted in and out of his career. Andretti became a Formula One world champion, continued building one of the broadest racing records ever assembled, and remained one of the defining American drivers of the 20th century. After a quick try in 1983, 1988 came with a serious Le Mans chance. He returned in a works Porsche 962C, sharing with son Michael and John Andretti. The Porsche 962 was one of the great prototype racing cars of its era. By 1988, however, Jaguar had become a major threat, and Porsche was no longer enjoying effortless domination. But a works 962C was still absolutely proper machinery. This was not nostalgia. This was not a celebratory entry. It was a genuine top-class car from one of endurance racing's great dynasties. The all-Andretti car finished 6th overall. That does not sound close in the way second place sounds close, but the result only tells part of the story. The car had genuine front-running quality and ran strongly before problems compromised the challenge. In the context of this episode, 1988 matters because it proves that Andretti's Le Mans pursuit was not confined to one lucky year. Across different eras, he repeatedly found himself in cars that could legitimately be discussed as potential winners. Then came the great near miss, Le Mans 1995. Driving a Courage Porsche with Bob Wallach and Eric Hellery, Andretti finished 2nd overall. That result is central to his Triple Crown case. It was not symbolic, it was not ceremonial, it was not a retired legend cruising around for nostalgia. Andretti was in a car capable of fighting for the win, in a race where victory was genuinely possible. In some ways, 1995 is the cruelest of all his Le Mans attempts, because by then, everyone knew what it meant. If Andretti won Le Mans, he would join Graham Hill as the only Triple Crown champion. However, he would not complete the classic Monaco version because, obviously, the Monaco Grand Prix was missing from his resume. And he came so painfully close. The Courage Porsche finished second overall, yet won its class. Andretti later felt that the team had lost the race through execution rather than lack of pace, delays, strategy calls, and race management decisions that, across 24 hours, became impossible to recover from. This is why Andretti sits above Alonso in the ranking. Alonso's Indy run in 2017 was brilliant. He qualified well, led laps, adapted quickly, and looked like a genuine contender before the engine failed, but he still did not reach the final decisive phase of the race. Andretti, by contrast, had Le Mans repeatedly within reach across his career. The 1995 result in particular is brutally tangible. The trophy was right there. The career-defining completion was right there. However, he ranks below Villeneuve only because Villeneuve's case is cleaner. Villeneuve had the Indy 500, the F1 title, same as Andretti, along with the second place at Le Mans in a modern factory Peugeot that was directly fighting Audi throughout the night for the overall win. Andretti's overall career was broader and his Le Mans pursuit lasted longer, but Villeneuve's near miss fits the Triple Crown argument with almost mathematical precision. Still, Andretti's case is enormous. He was not simply close once, he was close across different eras. A factory Ford contender in the 60s, a works Porsche prototype driver in the 80s, a Le Mans runner-up in the 90s. And through it all, he already had Indy, Formula One World Championship. Mario Andretti did almost everything. The word almost, it's doing a lot of work here. And finally, number one, the mercurial Jacques Villeneuve. The number one nearly man of the Triple Crown. This might surprise some people, because in the modern conversation, Alonso gets a lot more attention. Juan Pablo Montoya is often mentioned because he has Monaco and 2 Indy 500 wins. Mario Andretti has the great all-rounder. Career. Jim Clark has the greater mythology. Denny Hulme has the overlooked purity of a man who ticked more serious boxes than people remember. But if we are ranking the drivers who came closest under the terms of this episode, Villeneuve arguably has the strongest case. He won the Indy 500 in 1995 after finishing runner-up and Rookie of the Year in 1994. And that 1995 win was not normal. Villeneuve famously overcame a 2-lap penalty and still won the race. He became one of the defining achievements of his early career and one of the most remarkable Indy 500 victories of the modern era. At that point, he was not yet an F1 world champion. He was a young driver with a very famous surname, enormous pressure, and an ability to produce something extraordinary. Then he went to F1. In 1997, Villeneuve won the World Championship with Williams. The title was sealed after the controversial clash with Michael Schumacher at Jerez, but the championship was earned across the season. Villeneuve had arrived in Formula One in 1996, nearly won on debut in Australia, and challenged teammate Damon Hill for the title through to the season finale as a rookie, and then became champion the following year. So, he has the Indy 500. He has the Formula One World Championship, but not Monaco. This matters. Villeneuve fully satisfies the F1 title version, but not the combined title and Monaco version to put any doubters at bay. He came from a family forever linked with Monaco through Gilles Villeneuve's era and Ferrari mythology, but Jacques himself never added Monaco to his record. So why is he still number one? It's because of his Le Mans near miss is so direct. In 2008, Villeneuve drove for Peugeot at Le Mans in the 908 HDI FEP, sharing with Nicolas Minassian and Marc Genet. Peugeot was not there to make up the numbers. It was there to defeat Audi. The 2008 race was a genuine diesel heavyweight fight. Audi versus Peugeot, experience versus speed, execution versus outright pace. Villeneuve's Peugeot finished second overall despite setting the pace for the majority of the race, until the rain came. Peugeot did not so much get beaten by Audi, but somehow lost it through wet weather pace, tyre calls, and Audi being flawless when it mattered. That means he was one Le Mans victory away from completing the F1 title, Indy, Le Mans version of the Triple Crown. Not theoretically, not romantically, literally. He had won Indy, he had won the F1 World Championship, he finished second at Le Mans in a car from a factory program capable of winning the race and probably should have won the race. That is as close as it gets without the trophy. And this is why Villeneuve ranks above Andretti. Both won Indy, both won the F1 title, both finished second at Le Mans, but Villeneuve's Le Mans second came in a full works Peugeot program during a direct manufacturer battle at the front of the race. The car was dominating the race before the race seemed to slip from its grasp. Peugeot had the speed, the resources, and the ambition. Audi simply executed better, particularly when conditions became difficult. Villeneuve also ranks above Alonso because Alonso, for all his brilliance at Indy, never finished the race. He led laps, had a genuine shot, but the engine failure came before the final phase. Villeneuve completed Le Mans in second place. The missing trophy was on the same podium. And that is the difference. The irony is that Villeneuve's broader reputation often works against him. His BAR years, his later career, his outspoken personality, and the way his Formula One results declined after Williams can obscure just how extraordinary his peak's achievements were. People remember the underwhelming seasons and forget the range. But look at the facts. Indy 500 winner, kart champion, Formula One runner-up in his rookie season, Formula One world champion, Le Mans runner-up. That is a staggering cross-discipline record. And unlike some drivers whose Triple Crown case depends on imagination, Villeneuve's depends on a result sheet. He was right there. Peugeot were right there. One different Le Mans, one cleaner strategic run, one shift in weather or execution, and Jacques Villeneuve becomes only the second man to complete one of motorsport's most mythical achievements. There is also something deeply fitting about Villeneuve being the number one Nearly man. His career was never smooth. It was dramatic, spiky, sometimes brilliant, sometimes frustrating. He carried the Villeneuve name, but he never drove like a museum piece. He was aggressive, independent, and often difficult to categorize. In his best years, he had that rare quality of being able to jump between racing cultures without seeming intimidated by any of them. He won the 500, he won the F1 title, and he came ever so close to winning Le Mans. For this list, this is the strongest combination. Jacques Villeneuve did not complete the Triple Crown, but he got close enough that the achievement almost feels like a shadow attached to his career, and that is why he is the number one Nearly man. And finally, the name that ends the argument, Graham Hill. There is one problem with every name on the list. Every story ends with almost. Clark almost had the complete spread. Hulme almost had Le Mans. Alonso almost had Indy. Andretti almost had Le Mans. Villeneuve almost had Le Mans. Graham Hill is different. Graham Hill is where the argument stops. He is the only driver who does not need a favourable interpretation, a generous definition, a disputed scoring claim, or a what if. He does not need us to say that he nearly did it. He did it. He won the Monaco Grand Prix 5 times, 63, 64, 65, 68, and 69. That is why he became Mr. Monaco. Before Ayrton Senna turned Monaco into his own personal kingdom, Hill was the driver most closely associated with the race. Monaco rewarded precision, patience, and nerve. And Hill, well, he had all three. He was not always the fastest driver in pure natural terms. Few people would place him above Jim Clark for instinctive genius. But Monaco was never just about pure speed. Monaco was about judgment. It was about managing the car, the tyres, the gearbox, the walls, the traffic, and your own concentration. Hill understood that. He could build a race there. He could survive it. He could impose himself on it. That is the first piece of the Triple Crown. The second is Indianapolis. In '66, Hill went to the Indy 500 and won as a rookie. The race itself was chaotic and controversial. As mentioned earlier, Jim Clark finished second officially, but there has been a long debate over whether Clark's scoring was correctly handled after his spins. But the official result is Hill, and in motorsport, official results matter. Graham Hill won the 1966 Indianapolis 500. That victory is sometimes treated as the strangest part of his Triple Crown because Hill is remembered so strongly as a Grand Prix driver. But that is exactly why it matters. Indy was not an extension of Formula One. It was a totally different discipline with different instincts and different dangers. Hill crossed into that world and came away with its greatest prize. And then there's Le Mans. By '72, Hill was no longer the star of the 60s. He had already survived 2 Formula One World Championships in '62 and '68. He had survived serious injury. He had experienced triumph, decline, recovery and reinvention. He was at a different stage of his career, and yet at Le Mans, he found the final piece. Sharing a mattress Simca MS670 with Henri Pescarolo, Hill won the 1972 24-hour Le Mans. That victory completed the achievement that no other driver has ever matched. Monaco, Indy, Le Mans, and the Formula One World Championship twice as well. It is worth pausing on that. Hill did not merely complete the classic Triple Crown, he also satisfies the alternative version built around the F1 World Championship because he had the F1 titles too. Under the strictest standards, the F1 element is beyond argument. Hill won both the World Championship twice and Monaco 5 times. That makes him unique, even among unique drivers. He was not the fastest in every category. He was not the most naturally gifted driver of his generation. He was not a Jim Clark. He was not a Sterling Moss. He was not some untouchable force who made every car look easy. But that is part of what makes Hill's achievement even more compelling. The Triple Crown is not a monument to speed. It is a monument to adaptability, persistence and timing. Hill had to be good enough, brave enough, and available enough across 3 completely different racing cultures. He had to win the races in the right machinery at the right moments. That sounds simple only after it had been done. Just look at the men who failed to match him. Andretti had the range, the hunger and the machinery, but Le Mans never quite gave him the final trophy. Villeneuve had Indy in the F1 title, then stood second at Le Mans in a works Peugeot. Alonso had the titles, Monaco and Le Mans, then watched his best Indy chance disappear in a cloud of Honda smoke. Hulme had the championship, Monaco, a controversial Le Mans second, and genuine Indy speed. Jim Clark had the genius, the F1 titles, the Indy 500, and credible arguments that he might have had even more at the Speedway. Yet none of them did what Hill did, and that is why Graham Hill belongs at the end of this episode rather than the beginning. If we started with Hill, the story would feel too neat. We would simply say, here's the only man to complete the Triple Crown. But by travelling through the Nearly Men first, we see the scale of the achievement more clearly. We see how hard it was for Clark, even with all his genius. We see how close Hulme came in the Ford formation finish. We see how Alonso turned the chase into a modern obsession and still found Indy unwilling to surrender. We see how Andretti spent decades trying to add Le Mans to a career that already seemed complete. And we see how Villeneuve came within one strategy decision at Le Mans on joining Hill under the F1 title version. Then, and only then, does Hill's record land properly. Because Hill is not just the answer to a trivia question. He is proof that the impossible was, at least once, possible. The Triple Crown is not a championship. It is not a season. It is not even really a plan, at least not for most of motorsport history. It is a test of range across the sport's greatest extremes. Monaco asked for perfection. Indy asked for courage at sustained speed. Le Mans asked for endurance, patience, and survival. Graham Hill, well, he answered all 3. And that is why every other story in this episode ends with the question, what if Clark had lived longer? What if Hulme and Miles had not been caught off by the formation finish? What if Alonso's Honda engine had lasted? What if Andretti's Courage Porsche had executed the perfect race? What if Villeneuve's Peugeot had beaten Audi? Hill needs none of these questions. For Graham Hill, there is no almost, just history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Racing Chronicles. We've got plenty more stories coming your way, so stay tuned for the next chapter in racing history. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.